All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going way beyond the usual dashboards and reports. We're on a mission to find those hidden levers in your data, the kind of insights that don't just look good on a chart, but actually drive real, measurable financial growth.
So, here's the situation I'm sure a lot of you recognize. Your business is just swimming in data. You've got sales figures, web traffic, customer info, terabytes of the stuff. But when it's time to make a big call, you're still kind of relying on a gut feeling. You're data rich, but your insight poor. Today, we're all about closing that gap. We're going to turn that raw data into answers you can actually use.
We've laid this out kind of like a detective story. First, we're going to get into the right mindset, the detective's mindset. Then we'll track customers through time using something called cohort analysis. After that, we basically become plumbers, finding and fixing the financial leaks in your business. Then we get to the really cool part, figuring out the real levers of causation. And finally, we'll learn how to wrap it all up in a story that makes people take action.
Okay, let's kick things off with the most important part, the mental shift you have to make. This is all about moving from just reporting what happened to digging in and investigating why it happened. So on the left, you've got your standard traditional reporting. It's reactive. You ask a very specific question like, what were our sales last quarter? And boom, you get a number. It's useful, for sure, but it's like reading yesterday's news. On the right, that's exploratory data analysis, or EDA. This is proactive. It's less about answering questions you already have and more about discovering questions you didn't even know you should be asking. You're digging in and asking, okay, why were sales up? Was it a specific product, a certain marketing campaign? Are these new customers even as valuable as our old ones? It's a whole different ballgame. So what does this detective work actually look like in practice? It's not just about making fancy charts, right? Not at all. It actually starts with something way less glamorous. Auditing your data's integrity. You have to ask, are there missing values? And if there are, is it random or is there a pattern? Like if all your missing customer ages are from one specific sign-up source, well, that tells you something important. It's also about hunting for what we call impossible values. A customer who's -5 years old. If you don't clean that stuff up first, any conclusion you draw is built on a shaky foundation. You got to make sure your clues are solid before you start solving the case. Now, for a long time, that detective work was pretty slow, and you needed some serious technical chops to do it. But this is where AI-driven EDA is changing everything. Instead of an analyst having to manually figure out what to look for, the system can proactively sift through everything and flag interesting patterns a human might have totally missed.
And that row on technical requirement seems huge.
It's the difference between needing to be a coder and just being able to ask a question.
Exactly. This means a product manager or someone on the marketing team, people who know the business inside and out but don't write code, can now go straight to the data themselves. They can literally just ask, show me the trends for our new product, and get back not just a chart, but a whole story explaining what's driving those trends. It really opens up the whole discovery process to everyone.
Okay, so we've got our detective hat on. What's the first big tool we're pulling out of our kit? That's going to be cohort analysis. The big idea here is to stop looking at all your customers as one giant anonymous blob. Instead, you group them into cohorts based on things they have in common. It's all about understanding the customer journey over time, not just looking at a single snapshot. And you can slice this 3 main ways. First, you have acquisition cohorts. Think of it like the class of January versus the class of February. This lets you see if customers you got during a big holiday sale behave differently down the road. Second, there are behavioral cohorts. Here, you're grouping people by what they do, like who's used a specific key feature. This is how you find that aha moment that makes people stick around. And third, you've got predictive cohorts, where you use machine learning to guess future behavior, like who's at a high risk of canceling their subscription. Okay, that all makes sense, but it also sounds like a lot of work. What's the actual financial payoff? Why should a business really invest the time to do this? This is the payoff. Research shows that companies who really nail cohort analysis and use it to optimize their lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio, that's the LTV to CAC ratio, can boost their profitability by up to 25% over 3 years. And the reason is simple. You stop treating every customer the same. You learn which marketing channels bring you the valuable, loyal customers, and you stop throwing money at the channels that just bring in leaky bucket users who sign up and disappear a month later. And this table here shows you exactly how you get those results. When you start looking at cohorts, you can measure these really specific, powerful things. The retention curve, for instance, tells you if your product has real staying power. Does the curve flatten out over time, or does it just drop to 0?
The payback period tells you exactly how many months it takes to earn back the money you spent to get a customer in the door. And that aha trigger seems absolutely critical. Oh, it is. Once you find that key action that correlates with long-term value, you can completely redesign your onboarding to push every single new user towards that action. This is how data analysis stops being a report and starts being a business strategy.
All right, so if cohort analysis is about the long-term health of our customers, our next tool, funnel analysis, is like a leak detector for specific processes. It's where we track people step by step through a process, like signing up or buying something, to see exactly where they're dropping off. And fair warning, the numbers here can be pretty brutal. I mean, it's not unusual for 98 or even 99% of people who visit a website to never even become a lead. Then, of the few who do, another 80 to 90% might drop off before they even start a trial.
Wow, so you're losing almost everybody before they even get a chance to try the product.
Exactly. And then of those who do start a trial, maybe another 80% never pull out their credit card. It's like pouring water into a bucket full of holes. Every single one of those drop-off points is just lost revenue. And here we have maybe the most infamous leak in the entire digital world, 70.19%. That's the average rate that people abandon their online shopping carts. Just think about that for a second. 7 out of every 10 people who take the time to find a product they want, click add to cart, and then just walk away. It is a massive, silent revenue killer. It's money that was literally inches from your bank account, and then it just vanished, often because of something you can fix, like a surprise shipping cost or a confusing form. But here's the good news. Fixing these leaks has a huge compounding impact. You often get a much better return on your investment by fixing a problem at the bottom of the funnel than you do just pouring more money into ads at the top. The data shows businesses can see a 3 to 5 times return on these optimization efforts. So for example, a pretty small investment, let's say $4,000, to fix a confusing checkout process could easily bring back $20,000 in recovered sales. All right, now we're getting into the really advanced part of the investigation. We figured out where we're losing people and we know who our best customers are. But to build a really solid strategy, we have to understand why. And that means moving beyond simple correlation to find true causation, the actual levers that make the business move. This is the classic example that makes the difference so clear. Ice cream sales and shark attacks are correlated. When one goes up, the other tends to go up too. But obviously, eating ice cream doesn't cause shark attacks. The real cause, the hidden variable, is the hot weather. It makes more people buy ice cream and it makes more people go swimming. In business, finding that hot weather variable is the absolute holy grail. But that's pretty easy to see in hindsight. How do you find it in your business data when you can't just run a perfect, clean A/B test for every single decision you make? That is the million-dollar question, and the answer is a concept called counterfactual reasoning. It sounds really academic, but the idea is actually simple. You compare what really happened to what would have happened if you had done nothing at all. Can you give me an example? For sure. Let's say you send out a 10% off discount code and your sales go up. That's great. But the real question is how many of those people bought because of the code versus how many were going to buy anyway and just got a nice little discount? The difference between those two scenarios, what actually happened versus what would have happened without the code, that's the true causal impact of your marketing campaign. And to figure that out without a perfect experiment, data scientists have this whole toolkit of sophisticated methods. Whoa, okay, that looks complicated. Can you explain one of those in plain English? Yeah, let's just take the first one, difference in differences, or DID. Imagine you launch a new feature, but only for your users in California. Now, you can't just compare California's sales before and after, because what if sales were trending up everywhere for some other reason? So what you do is you also look at a similar state, let's say Texas, where you didn't launch the feature. You then compare the difference in California sales to the difference in Texas's sales. And the difference between those two differences helps you isolate the true impact of your new feature, because it controls for the overall market trend. It's a really clever way to basically create a natural experiment using historical data. Okay, let's bring this all home. We've done the detective work, we've sliced up our cohorts, we've plugged the leaks in our funnels, and we've even uncovered some real causal relationships. But you know what? None of it matters if it just sits in a spreadsheet on your laptop. The last, and maybe the most important step, is turning all this complex stuff into a simple story that people can act on. And this is the critical point. Your analysis is basically useless unless it's framed in a story that your CEO or your head of product can understand in about 30 seconds. They don't need to see your Python code or every single chart you made along the way, right? They need a story about the financial impact, the cost of doing nothing, and a clear recommendation for what to do next. The final product isn't the data itself. It's the decision the data helps you make.
A huge part of telling a good business story is speaking the language of business. And that language, 9 times out of 10, is return on investment, or ROI. This formula for conversion rate optimization, or CRO, is a perfect way to do that. It directly translates your analytical work into a number that everybody in the room understands. So can you walk me through a real example? Let's connect it back to that leaky funnel we were talking about.
Absolutely. Let's tie this all together. Remember that leaky funnel? Say your analysis found a huge drop-off on the checkout page. You spend $4,000 of a developer's time to simplify the form and make the shipping costs super clear upfront. The next month, you measure the impact and find you've recovered $20,000 in sales that were previously being abandoned. So you just plug those numbers in. 20,000 minus 4,000 divided by 4,000 times 100. And what you get is a 400% ROI. Now that is a story that gets budgets approved and gets things done.
So that's the whole journey. We went from being data-rich but insight-poor all the way to being data detectives. We learned how to use powerful tools like cohort analysis to figure out who our best customers are and funnel analysis to stop bleeding cash. We leveled up to find the true causal levers that move the business. And finally, we learned how to package it all up into a compelling, ROI-driven story that actually sparks change. The insights are right there, hiding in your numbers. Your data is telling you a story every single day about where you're winning and where you're losing. The only real question left is, are you ready to listen?